Hello, macro students. Here we go. This is 2014. Let's look where we started. It says operating below full employment. So we know below full employment means we are in a recessionary gap. What does it tell us to do? It tells us to draw it with the long run and tells us what to label. So we're going to go ahead and label that. Let's start. So we'll start with A. GDPR, and it looks like GDO. There we go. We got price level, put our long run aggregate supply, represents full employment. We have our aggregate demand, aggregate supply. As you can see, I already made a mistake because it told you to label full employment as just YF. So I'll go ahead and erase that. And we'll put that as YF. Then we're going to go right here. It says PL1 and Y1. So we have Y1, PL1. That gives us A. Just have to draw where we're at. Right here, B, let's look what it says. It says B, spending of $100 billion, which is financed by borrowing. How will the increase in government spending affect each of the following? Cyclical and NRU. We'll come back over here. We have B. B1, you should correctly say that cyclical unemployment will decrease. Remember, that's the bad unemployment. So we would go from here to here. Why? Because aggregate demand is going to increase because of the government spending. For 2, that's your trick question. And for NRU, you should put no change. Why is it no change? Because remember, that's the NRU and nothing is changing there because there's no shifter. Let's look at C. At C, it tells us that MPC is 0.75, maximum possible change real GDP based on the $100 billion. Well, if MPC is 0.75, that means that we know MPS is 0.25, and we solve for our multiplier by going 1 over 0.25, which gives us a multiplier of 4. So now we come over here with our multiplier of 4, and we have 4 times 100 billion equals 400 billion. And so we know our total change is 400 billion. That's your answer for C. Let's look at D. D says, graph your loanable funds market and show the effect of a $100 billion increase on government spending on real interest rates. Remember, real interest rates should have told you that you're drawing the loanable funds market. So let's draw it. We have QLF. We have interest rate. IR real. So let's draw our demand for loanable funds, the supply of loanable funds. Come down here. We can label this QE and label this IRE. So we know if the government is borrowing more money to spend, we know that the demand for loanable funds is going to increase. We have Q1 and D1 right there. So that shows graphically, that shows graphically what happens there. And so you can, or what you're showing, I made another mistake. That should be IR1. That's why you always double check. Shows that real interest rates increase. Let's look at E. E says, based on the real interest rates in part D, what's the effect on long run growth? So remember, growth is determined by investment. So if interest rates are high, if you looked at that little sheet you would have right there, you would see that interest rates are high, investment is low. So if investment is low, you should say that real growth will fall. Notice it does give you an explain right there, so you need more than just real growth will fall. And your explanation should be interest rates increase, so investment will decrease. That's E right there. Let's look at F. F says, now assume instead of financing $100 billion increase by government spending by borrowing, the U.S. increases taxes by 100. With the equal increase in government spending and taxes, will real GDP increase, decrease, or remain the same? You should have said GDP will increase. And notice you had the explain again right here, so you have to explain. So the easiest way to say it is that spending multiplier has a greater effect. And that's it. All right, let's move on. All right, let's go with number 2 here. Number 2 says, assume the Federal Reserve targets a lower federal funds rate. So we know they don't control the federal funds rate, they influence it, and they do that by buying and selling of bonds. So if they want a lower federal funds rate, that means they want more money in the system. And so we know for A1, buy, because buy big, so they're going to buy. And 2, what happens to the price of government bonds? Remember, there's an inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices. So in this example, it's causing interest rates to decrease. So the price of bonds, we write bond prices will increase. Okay. B, you have to draw the graph. So let's draw the money market graph. We got Q money, interest rate nominal. We're going to put money supply in here. And we have the demand for money. We'll label this ME and label this RE. Make that nominal a better N. And we have money supply increasing. Let's label this all here. There we go. As you can see, money supply increase, which causes nominal interest rates to decrease. That's all you needed for B. Let's look at C. Assume the Federal Reserve buys bonds from commercial banks. Based on this transaction, will the required reserve of the commercial banks increase, decrease, or remain the same? You should have said no initial effect. That's all you needed. You could have put no initial effect on reserves, required reserves. Let's do that better. There we go. And then D. Another monetary policy action involves changing the discount rate. What is the discount rate? All you have to do is define it. That's a pretty slam dunk question. So you could just say the interest rate the Fed charges commercial banks. And there you go. Number 2 is all done. Let's go on to number 3. Number 3, if you did it, good. I hope you did it, even though it will not be on the AP test for you. But I'm going to go over it with you anyway, because it has a couple things that could appear, which are exports. So it says U.S. South Korea are trading partners. U.S. has a 0 account balance. Assume now that the inflation rate in the U.S. decreases. So our price level decreases relative to South Korea. Based on the decrease in the inflation of the U.S., will United States exports to South Korea increase or decrease or remain the same? You should have put A. You should have correctly said that our exports will increase. And why? Because if our inflation rate is lower than theirs, that means our stuff is cheaper. B, you should have correctly, it says, based on the change in exports, will the U.S. current account balance be at 0, surplus, or deficit? What will happen to real GDP in the U.S. in the short run? And you got an explain there. So a little bit more you have to write. So for B1, you should have correctly said that the account will be in surplus. Why? Because they're buying more of our stuff. For 2, you should have correctly said that GDP will increase because of net exports increase. And then C. And then for C, you just have to draw the foreign exchange market, which you do not have to do for the dollar. So you would have Q dollars. You would have won over dollars. You would have had the demand for the supply of. You would have had the demand for dollars increasing. And there you go. Again, you're not going to have that on the test, but it's there for you. I hope that helps for you to understand 2014. Any other questions, please let me know.